When people first see this question, their instinctive reaction is to think it is a joke. Some might even respond emotionally, asking why you are still worrying about this. But if you take this scenario back into real life instead of a spreadsheet, you will realize this isn't actually a question about math or financial literacy. It is a very typical kind of anxiety people in their 30s face. After you've already done almost everything right by conventional financial standards, you start wondering if you really need to keep living in this optimized way. Let me give you an example, so this makes more sense. I have a friend who is a surgical oncologist in private practice. He has been practicing independently for 2 years, married, and planning to have 2 children. His wife plans to leave the workforce after the kids are born. His income structure is typical of a high-income, but highly labor-dependent professional. Around $800,000 in W-2 income per year, plus roughly $200,000 from medical speaking engagements and industry sponsorships, bringing his total annual income close to $1 million. He has no debt other than a mortgage, and on the surface his financial life looks extremely stable. From an asset perspective, he has already optimized the standard answer. About $200,000 in a Roth IRA, $70,000 in a Roth 401k, $120,000 in a traditional 401k, and $40,000 in a health savings account. His employer also contributes an additional roughly $25,000 per year. He has been consistently saving since his residency years with almost no interruption. If you assume a 7% long-term compounded return, his retirement accounts alone could grow to nearly $15 million by age 63. So the question naturally arises, if he is already on a failure-proof path, does he still need to save more outside of that? From a purely mathematical standpoint, you could end the discussion quickly. If he truly continues working for 30 years without income decline, with consistent savings and stable investment returns, then he is already on a very high probability path to financial independence. In other words, in a clean model, he doesn't need to worry about retiring. But that is exactly where reality diverges from the model. The real issue is never whether you understand compound interest, it is whether you have properly accounted for uncertainty. First, income stability is not as solid as it appears. Physicians look like they have high and stable income. But surgical oncology is heavily dependent on insurance reimbursement systems, and hospital billing structures dictate a lot of the terms. That means income is not purely determined by individual skill. It is strongly influenced by external payment rules. If reimbursement policies change, or if industry payment pressure tightens, income could drop from $800,000 to $500,000, or even lower, even if the workload stays exactly the same. And this kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. It erodes gradually, and by the time you notice it, your expensive lifestyle is already completely locked in. Second, household structure changes matter a lot more than people expect. The spouse plans to leave the workforce after having children, which is extremely common, but the financial impact is often severely underestimated. A household shifts from a dual income to a single income system, while spending patterns rarely adjust downward at the same pace. And children are not just an additional expense, they fundamentally reshape how your resources are allocated. Childcare, education, and extracurricular activities all add up quickly. Housing preferences and time costs all rise together in a persistent way. Even more importantly, people naturally and unconsciously ratchet up their lifestyle baseline. This usually happens during those peak high-income years. In other words, even if you theoretically could live more simply, you have already adapted to a much higher cost structure. Once that structure is built, it becomes psychologically and practically difficult to reverse. So the question becomes, if your spreadsheets say you are retirement ready, can you actually tolerate a future where income drops or where your lifestyle flexibility is severely reduced? Then, there is another factor that is often ignored: the inevitable burnout and life stage shifts. Many people in their 30s believe they can sustain high-intensity work. They think they can do it for 30 years straight. But in reality, that is rarely how life unfolds. People start reassessing the value of their time in their 40s and significantly reduce workload or exit high-stress roles in their 50s. So the 30-year straight-line career path is usually not linear. It gets broken into very distinct phases. This leads to a much more subtle point. The question is not just whether you will have $15 million at 63, but whether you will have the option to change your life earlier. If all your wealth is locked inside retirement accounts, your flexibility is actually incredibly limited. That is why many people recommend having taxable brokerage accounts, or more flexible savings in addition to retirement accounts. Retirement accounts answer if you have enough money at 60, but taxable accounts answer if you can change your life at 45. These are not redundant at all. They represent different dimensions of financial freedom across time. At the same time, there is another very real but often overlooked factor: the sudden arrival of major risk events. In high-income households, a serious illness or a career-ending accident, even a legal issue, can significantly alter the financial trajectory. Insurance can hedge part of this risk, but it cannot fully replace income. This is especially true for high-earning physicians. Even disability insurance only replaces a limited percentage of income, and it certainly cannot sustain the original lifestyle. So a more conservative view argues about true financial safety. It is not just how much money you will have in the future, but whether you are still financially secure if your income suddenly stops. With all these perspectives layered together, the debate naturally splits into two camps. One camp emphasizes math and efficiency. If you are already on track to have $15 million, then the marginal benefit of extreme additional savings is diminishing. Instead, you should optimize for life experience. Work less, spend more time with family, or gradually transition into semi-retirement. Their core belief is that money only matters if it buys you time. It should not just be endlessly accumulated. The other camp emphasizes risk and uncertainty. They argue the entire projection rests on overly ideal assumptions: sustained high income, stable health, stable marriage, and stable market returns. If any one of these variables breaks, the entire retirement plan changes. Therefore, they prefer to keep saving aggressively and build more taxable assets and liquidity in exchange for options. But the real difference between these two views is not financial, it is psychological. The first group is more comfortable with the idea that life can be insecure, just as long as it is freer. The second group believes life must be secure first and freedom comes after. And this 33-year-old physician is standing exactly at that fork. He is not really asking if he has enough money, he is asking something much harder. When I am already very close to what society defines as success, do I still want to spend the next 30 years doubling down? If you strip away all the models and numbers, the situation becomes very simple, but not easy. You can continue maximizing savings and push financial certainty as far as possible. But the trade-off is staying in a high-pressure work environment for much longer. You can start increasing taxable investments and flexible savings, effectively buying yourself optionality, but accepting slightly more uncertainty in the future. Or you can reduce your savings rate and prioritize time and life experience now. But the trade-off is accepting that your future wealth may not look as impressive. And the most uncomfortable truth is this: no calculator can decide which kind of regret you are more willing to live with. Regretting not having enough money when you're older, or regretting not having lived enough when you're young. So in the end, this is not really a financial planning question, it is a question of life priorities. Money just amplifies that prioritization and makes it impossible to ignore. If you opened your phone tonight and saw your retirement accounts were sufficient, but with one condition: your income may not grow over the next 10 years, and it could even decline slightly, would you close your phone and go to sleep immediately, or start recalculating your entire life?